The twin suns of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the crystalline desert as Zarath dragged herself behind a cluster of violet rocks. Her left wing hung at an unnatural angle, the delicate membrane torn and bleeding a luminescent blue that marked her trail like scattered stars. Each breath sent sharp pain through her chest where the plasma blast had caught her during the ambush. The Kethvari scout pressed her back against the cold stone, trying to steady her breathing. Her four-fingered hands trembled as she checked her weapon's energy cell, nearly depleted. The communication device on her wrist flickered weakly before going dark entirely. No signal, no rescue, no hope. 3 rotations ago, her reconnaissance unit had been investigating strange energy signatures in this sector when the Vorthon raiders struck without warning. The brutal reptilian species had been expanding their territory for cycles, enslaving or destroying anyone who stood in their way. Zarath's unit hadn't stood a chance against their superior numbers and firepower. She remembered watching helplessly as her squad leader, Nexel, fell to a barrage of crimson bolts. The young pilot, Kara, had tried to reach the transport ship, but never made it past the second dune. One by one, her comrades had been cut down while she played dead among the wreckage of their scout vessel. The Vorthons had searched the area for survivors, their heavy boots crushing the delicate crystal formations underfoot. Their guttural voices carried on the thin atmosphere as they spoke of slaves and profit. When they found nothing of immediate value, they had departed, leaving behind only death and destruction. Zarath had waited until their ship disappeared beyond the horizon before attempting to move. That was 2 days ago. Since then, she had been struggling across the hostile landscape, her injuries worsening with each passing hour. The wound in her chest had stopped bleeding, but infection was setting in. Her torn wing made it impossible to achieve flight, reducing her to crawling across terrain that would have taken minutes to cross in the air. The desert planet showed no mercy. During the day, temperatures soared beyond tolerable levels, forcing her to seek shelter in whatever shade she could find. At night, the cold was so intense that ice crystals formed on her scales and she could barely feel her extremities. Food was non-existent, and the small emergency water supply in her equipment pouch was nearly exhausted. As the larger sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Zarath knew she was dying. Her people believed that consciousness continued after death, joining with the collective memory of their ancestors in the great beyond. She found some comfort in this, though she regretted that her final mission would remain incomplete. The intelligence about Vorthon movements that her unit had gathered would die with her. She closed her large violet eyes and tried to remember home. The floating cities of Kethvar, suspended in the planet's dense atmosphere by ancient gravity manipulators. The song winds that carried messages between the spires, the feeling of soaring through cloud banks with her wing siblings during the evening thermal dances. A strange sound pulled her from her reverie. It was mechanical, but different from Vorthon technology. The frequency was wrong, the harmonic signature unfamiliar. Zarath forced herself to peer around the rock formation, expecting to see another raider patrol. Instead, she saw something impossible. The vessel that landed in a shower of retro thruster fire was unlike anything in her database. It was roughly cylindrical but asymmetrical, with odd protrusions and what appeared to be external armor plating welded in place. Exhaust vented from multiple points along its hull, and the whole craft looked like it had been assembled from salvaged parts of a dozen different ships. The airlock cycled open with a hydraulic hiss, and a figure emerged that made Zarath's breath catch in her throat. It walked upright on 2 legs like a Kethvari, but there the similarities ended. Its skin was a pale pink-brown color, mostly hairless except for a thick patch on top of its head. It wore an environmental suit that looked as cobbled together as its ship, with various tools and devices hanging from a utility belt. But what truly shocked her was its behavior. Instead of surveying the area for threats or valuable resources, the creature immediately began examining the wreckage of her scout ship. It moved with purpose, but also with what appeared to be concern. It knelt beside blast marks in the sand, running its gloved hands through the crystalline debris. The being's head turned in her direction, and Zarath instinctively pressed herself deeper into hiding. But it wasn't looking for threats. Its strange, forward-facing eyes seemed to be tracking something else entirely. After a moment, she realized with growing alarm that it was following her blood trail. Panic flooded through her as the creature began moving in her direction. Every instinct told her to run, but her body wouldn't cooperate. She could barely lift her head, let alone flee. Her hand moved weakly toward her weapon, though she doubted she had the strength to aim it properly. The being rounded the rock formation and stopped dead when it saw her. For a long moment, they stared at each other across a gap of perhaps 10 meters. Zarath could see her own reflection in the creature's helmet visor, a broken, bleeding figure huddled against the stones like a wounded animal. Then the being did something that defied all logic and expectation. It slowly raised both hands, palms outward, in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. It spoke, and though the words were completely alien to her, the tone was gentle, almost soothing. "Easy there," the human said, though Marcus Chen knew the injured alien couldn't understand him. "I'm not going to hurt you." He could see the fear in those large violet eyes, the way the creature's good wing was pressed protectively against its body. The amount of luminescent blood on the rocks told him everything he needed to know about how badly it was hurt. Whatever had happened here had been brutal. Marcus had been tracking Vorthon raider activity for weeks, following the trail of destruction they left in their wake. As an independent salvage operator, he usually avoided their territory, but lately they had been ranging farther from their home systems. When his sensors picked up the wreckage signature, he had hoped to find useful materials. Instead, he found a massacre. The alien made a weak sound, somewhere between a whistle and a trill. Its weapon hand was moving, but so slowly that it was obviously struggling. Marcus realized it was probably dying. Okay, he said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I'm going to help you. Just stay calm." He reached slowly into his kit and pulled out a universal translator device. The unit was military surplus, designed to handle first-contact situations. It would take a few minutes to analyze the aliens' language patterns, but it was their best hope for communication. "I know you can't understand me yet," Marcus continued, holding the translator where the alien could see it. "But this thing will help us talk. I'm not your enemy." The alien's eyes fixed on the device as it began to emit soft beeping sounds. Marcus could see intelligence there, along with the pain and fear. This wasn't some mindless creature. It was a person, and it was suffering. "Please," came a weak voice from the translator as it began to parse the alien's language. "Do not harm. I have nothing." "I'm not going to harm you," Marcus replied, relief flooding through him as the translator worked its magic. "I'm here to help. My name is Marcus. What's yours?" The alien's eyes widened with surprise. "You speak? How is this possible?" "Translation technology," Marcus explained, gesturing to the device. "Are you hurt badly?" A sound that might have been bitter laughter emerged from the alien. "I am dying, Marcus Human. My squad is dead. The Vorthans left me for the desert to finish." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Marcus muttered, already moving closer. The alien didn't try to stop him, which he took as a good sign. Up close, he could see the extent of the injuries. The wing damage was severe, but probably not life-threatening. The chest wound was more concerning. It looked infected, and was definitely beyond his field medical training. "My name is Zarath," the alien said softly. Was scout of the Kethvari Reconnaissance Corps. Nice to meet you, Zarath, though I wish it was under better circumstances, Marcus replied, pulling medical supplies from his kit. I'm going to stabilize you and get you to my ship. My medical bay isn't much, but it's better than dying in the desert. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Your species. I do not know your species. Why would you help me? Marcus paused in his preparations, meeting those violet eyes. Because it's the right thing to do. Where I come from, we don't leave people behind if we can help it. He began working on her wounds with practiced efficiency. The medical foam would stop the bleeding and fight infection, while the portable stabilizer would keep her vital signs steady during transport. It wasn't pretty, but it would keep her alive. There, he said, sitting back on his heels. That should hold you until we get to better facilities. Can you move at all? Zarath tested her limbs carefully. The pain was still there, but somehow manageable now. Yes, I think so. Your medicine works quickly. Human field medicine is designed for combat zones, Marcus explained, helping her to her feet. We've gotten pretty good at keeping people alive in bad situations. The walk to his ship was slow but steady. Marcus supported most of Zarath's weight, and she marveled at his strength. Despite being shorter than her, he seemed to have no trouble bearing her burden. More puzzling was his continued kindness. In her experience, most species would have demanded something in return for rescue: information, payment, or service. Your vessel is unusual, she commented as they approached the landing ramp. Marcus chuckled. That's one way to put it. She's not much to look at, but the redemption has gotten me out of more tight spots than I can count. The ship's interior was a fascinating mix of technologies from different worlds, all somehow working together in harmony. Zarath recognized Altarian power couplings, Zephyrian navigation systems, and what looked like modified Taraxian engines. It was a testament to either brilliant engineering or complete madness. Welcome aboard, Marcus said, guiding her toward what was obviously the medical bay. Let's get you properly taken care of. As the medical scanners hummed to life around her, Zarath felt something she hadn't experienced in days: hope. This strange human had risked himself to save a complete alien, asking for nothing in return. Perhaps there was more to this species than she had imagined. The universe, it seemed, still held surprises. The medical bay of the Redemption was cramped but surprisingly well equipped. Zarath lay on the examination table as various scanners and diagnostic tools hummed around her, painting her injuries in detailed holographic displays. Marcus worked with practiced efficiency, his hands steady as he operated equipment that seemed far more advanced than his cobbled-together ship suggested. Good news, he said, studying the readouts. The infection hasn't spread as far as I feared. The wing damage is extensive, but the bone structure is intact. With proper treatment, you should be able to fly again. Zarath felt tears of relief gathering in her large eyes. For a Kethvari, the loss of flight was worse than death. I was certain I would never soar again. How is this possible? Human medicine tends to focus on recovery and adaptation, Marcus explained, preparing a series of injections. We're pretty stubborn about giving up on people. These will fight the infection and accelerate tissue regeneration. Fair warning, they're going to make you drowsy. As the medications began to take effect, Zarath found her mind drifting, but she fought against the pull of sleep, too curious about her rescuer to rest. Marcus, tell me about your people. In all the galactic databases, I have never encountered records of humans. Marcus settled into a chair beside the medical table, his expression thoughtful. That's because we're new to the galactic scene. Relatively speaking, anyway. My species only achieved faster-than-light travel about 50 years ago. We're still figuring out our place in the bigger universe. 50 years? Zarath's voice was filled with surprise. That is incredibly recent. Most species require centuries to develop stable FTL technology. How did you manage it so quickly? A wry smile crossed Marcus's face. Necessity and stubbornness, mostly. We had some help from a crashed alien ship that landed in our territory. But mostly we just refused to accept that something was impossible. The medications were making Zarath's thoughts fuzzy, but she pressed on. Your ship. It is unlike anything I have seen. The technology combinations should not work together. Yeah, well, humans have a talent for making incompatible things work, Marcus said with pride. We call it jury-rigging, or making do. When you're the new species in a galaxy full of established powers, you learn to be creative with whatever you can get your hands on. Zarath's eyes were growing heavy, but she managed one more question. Why did you help me? Your species has no alliance with mine. No treaty or obligation. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching the steady rhythm of her breathing on the monitors. Because leaving you there would have been wrong. Humans have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I couldn't do nothing. Sleep finally claimed her, but not before Zarath felt a profound sense of safety that she hadn't experienced since childhood. Whatever this human was, he meant her no harm. She woke to the gentle vibration of the ship's engines and the soft hum of life support systems. The medical bay was dimly lit, and she could see stars sliding past through a small porthole. They were traveling through hyperspace. Good. You're awake, Marcus said, entering the bay with a steaming cup of something that smelled wonderful. How are you feeling? Zarath tested her limbs carefully. The pain in her chest had faded to a dull ache, and her wing, while still tender, no longer sent jolts of agony through her body when she moved. Much better. Your medicine is remarkable. It's actually a combination of human and Altarian techniques, Marcus explained, offering her the cup. Herbal tea with some added nutrients should help with the healing process. The liquid was warm and soothing, with a complex flavor that reminded her of the mountain springs on Kethvar. Where are we going? Kepler Station. It's a neutral trade hub about 2 days from here. They have proper medical facilities and long-range communications. You'll be able to contact your people and arrange transport home. Zarath nodded, though she felt an unexpected pang at the thought of leaving. I must find a way to repay your kindness, Marcus. Among my people, life debts are sacred obligations. Marcus waved dismissively. No debt. I told you. It was the right thing to do. But surely there is something. Actually, Marcus interrupted, his tone becoming more serious. There might be something you could help me with, but not as payment, as a favor between friends. The concept of friendship between species was not uncommon in the galaxy, but something about the way Marcus said it felt different, genuine. What do you need? Marcus pulled up a star chart on the bay's display screen. I've been tracking Vorthan raider movements for weeks. They're expanding their territory faster than anyone realizes, and they're using new technology, ships that are more advanced than anything they should have access to. Zarath studied the chart, her military training taking over. This pattern, they are not random raids. This is systematic expansion. But you are correct about the technology. Our intelligence suggested they had acquired new weapons, but the sources were unclear. Your reconnaissance mission. What did you find out there? The memories of her fallen comrades brought a sharp pain to Zarath's chest. We discovered a hidden facility. The Vorthans were meeting with another species, one I did not recognize. The exchange appeared to be technology for raw materials. Marcus leaned forward intently. What did this other species look like? Tall, thin, with pale gray skin and large black eyes. Their ships were sleek, organic in appearance, unlike anything in the galactic database. Zarath paused, studying Marcus's expression. You know of them? Maybe. There have been rumors in the outer colonies about a species like that. They call themselves the Silence. Nobody knows where they come from, but they've been selling advanced weapons to anyone with enough resources to pay. Why would they do such a thing? Marcus stood and began pacing the small space. That's what I'm trying to figure out. See, humans are still new to galactic politics, but we've seen this pattern before in our own history. When someone starts arming multiple factions simultaneously, it usually means they're planning something bigger. The implications hit Zarath like a physical blow. A war. They are preparing for a war. That's my theory. The Vorthans are just one client. If the Silence is selling to other aggressive species as well, Marcus didn't need to finish the thought. Zarath felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature controls. The galactic powers are not prepared for such a conflict. Most species have grown complacent in the peace. Exactly. Which is why I need to find solid evidence of what's happening, something concrete that I can present to the Galactic Council. The facility we discovered, the coordinates are in my mission records, but it may no longer be operational after our unit was discovered. Marcus nodded grimly. Maybe, but it's still our best lead. Would you be willing to help me investigate? I know it's dangerous, and you've already been through enough. Zarath didn't hesitate. My squad died trying to gather this intelligence. To honor their sacrifice, it must reach those who can act upon it. Thank you, Marcus said simply, but I want you to understand this isn't going to be easy. The Vorthans will be watching that area, and if the Silence is involved, we could be facing technology far beyond what either of our species has encountered. Then it is fortunate we have human adaptability and Kethvari reconnaissance skills working together. Marcus smiled for the first time since she'd awakened. You know, that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Over the next several hours, they pored over star charts and intelligence reports. Zarath was impressed by the thoroughness of Marcus's research. For someone belonging to such a young spacefaring species, he had a remarkable understanding of galactic politics and trade routes. How did you acquire all this information? She asked, studying a detailed analysis of Vorthan military capabilities. Humans are natural traders and explorers, Marcus explained. When we first reached the stars, we quickly learned that information is the most valuable commodity in the galaxy. We may not have the most advanced technology or the largest fleets, but we're very good at making friends and learning things. And your ship? The modifications are quite extensive. Marcus's expression grew somewhat sheepish. I may have bent a few regulations getting her space-worthy, but everything I did is technically legal. Humans have become experts at finding loopholes in galactic law. Despite everything she had been through, Zarath found herself laughing. It was a sound she hadn't made in weeks. You are a most unusual species, Marcus Chen. Wait until you meet more of us. I'm actually pretty normal by human standards. The thought of an entire species of beings like Marcus was both fascinating and slightly terrifying. If they were all as stubborn, resourceful, and compassionate as her rescuer, humanity would undoubtedly make its mark on the galaxy. As they continued their planning, Zarath felt something she hadn't experienced since her unit had been ambushed, hope for the future, not just for her own survival, but for the possibility that the growing darkness in the galaxy might be stopped before it consumed everything. The ship's communication system chimed softly, indicating they were approaching their destination. Through the porthole, Zarath could see the massive bulk of Kepler Station growing larger against the star field. One day to rest and resupply, Marcus said, gathering up their research materials. Then we head back into Vorthan territory. Zarath tested her wing carefully. The regeneration treatments had worked better than she had dared hope. Soon, she would be able to fly again, but more importantly, she would be able to fight again. "Marcus," she said as they prepared to dock, "I want you to know that whatever happens in the days ahead, you have given me something precious beyond measure." "What's that?" "The chance to make my squad's sacrifice meaningful." "Thank you." Marcus nodded solemnly. "They would be proud of you, Zarath, and they'd want us to succeed." As Kepler Station's docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk, both of them knew they were embarking on a mission that could change the fate of the galaxy. The evidence they sought could prevent a war, or they might find themselves at the center of one, but they were no longer facing the darkness alone. The return journey to Vorthon space took them through some of the most dangerous territory in the Outer Rim. Marcus had modified the Redemption's sensor signature to mimic that of a common freight hauler, while Zarath worked on adapting her military reconnaissance equipment to interface with the ship's eclectic systems. Despite their different origins, human and Kethvari technology proved surprisingly compatible. "Sensor contact," Zarath announced from her position at the navigation station. "3 ships bearing 27 Mark IV. Configuration matches Vorthon radar patterns." Marcus adjusted their course slightly, putting them on a trajectory that would seem natural for a cargo vessel avoiding the patrol route. "Let them think we're just another smuggler trying to stay out of trouble." The Vorthon ships maintained their distance, apparently satisfied that the Redemption posed no threat. It was a testament to Marcus's modifications that they read as a harmless merchant vessel rather than the heavily armed scout ship they had become. "Contact lost," Zarath reported as the raiders disappeared behind an asteroid field. "We are approaching the coordinates of the facility." "Any signs of activity?" Zarath's enhanced sensors swept the area methodically. "Negative. The installation appears to have been abandoned. But Marcus, there are debris fields, recent ones." Through the viewports, they could see the scattered remains of what had once been a substantial operation. Twisted metal and crystalline components drifted in the void, some still glowing with residual energy. Whatever had happened here had been violent and thorough. "There," Zarath pointed to a section of relatively intact structure spinning slowly against the star field. "That appears to be a data core housing. If any records survived, they would be in there." Marcus maneuvered the Redemption closer to the wreckage with practiced precision. "Looks like someone beat us to it. Those blast patterns are definitely silence technology." "They eliminated their own allies? Or the Vorthons tried to double-cross them and paid the price? Either way, we need to see what's left in that data core." The EVA suit Marcus provided was clearly human-designed, but had been modified to accommodate Zarath's physiology. Her wing membranes fit into specially designed recesses, and the helmet had been enlarged to accommodate her cranial ridges. It was another example of human adaptability that impressed her deeply. Working together in the vacuum of space, they carefully extracted the damaged data core from its housing. Zarath's experience with Kethvari technology proved invaluable in identifying which components were still functional, while Marcus's mechanical skills allowed him to safely remove the delicate crystalline storage matrices. "Got it," Marcus announced as the final connection separated. "Let's get this back to the ship and see what secrets it's hiding." The data core's contents were extensive, but heavily corrupted. It took both of them working in shifts to piece together a coherent picture of what had been happening at the facility. What they found was far worse than either had imagined. "This cannot be accurate," Zarath breathed, staring at the decoded files. "The scale is enormous." The data revealed that the Silence had been arming not just the Vorthons, but dozens of aggressive species across the galaxy. Weapons, ships, tactical information, all provided in exchange for what appeared to be territorial concessions and resource rights. "It's not random," Marcus realized, overlaying the data on a galactic map. "Look at the pattern. They're targeting species near major trade routes and strategic resources." Zarath felt sick as the implications became clear. They are preparing to seize control of the galactic economy when the conflicts they have sparked reach their peak. They'll be in position to present themselves as peacekeepers, Marcus finished, offering protection to anyone willing to accept their authority. How many species do you estimate are involved? Marcus ran the calculations through the ship's computer. Conservative estimate? At least 40 species have received significant military upgrades in the past 2 years. If even half of them act on their new capabilities simultaneously, the galaxy would erupt in chaos. Worlds would burn, while the Silence positioned themselves as the only force capable of restoring order. It was a strategy that was both brilliant and terrifying in its scope. "We have to warn the Galactic Council," Zarath said urgently. "This evidence must reach them before it's too late." "Agreed. But first, we need to confirm one more thing." Marcus highlighted a section of the data that had been only partially decoded. "This looks like coordinates for another facility, a bigger one. The location was deep in uncharted space, far from any known shipping lanes or inhabited systems. According to the fragmentary records, it was some kind of primary coordination center for the Silence operation. If we could gather evidence from that location," Zarath began, "it would be irrefutable proof of what they're planning, but it's also probably heavily defended and definitely a trap if they're expecting trouble." Zarath studied the star charts thoughtfully. "My people have a saying: the wind that carries you forward is the same that can dash you against the rocks." "Meaning?" "Sometimes the greatest risk is also the only path to victory." Marcus was quiet for several minutes, weighing their options. The smart thing would be to take what evidence they had and race for council space. But if the Silence discovered that their plan had been exposed, they might accelerate their timeline. The galaxy could be at war before any warning reached the major powers. "All right," he said finally. "We go after the big fish. But we do it smart. One pass, collect what we can, and run like hell." The journey to the coordinates took them through regions of space that no civilized species had explored. Ancient stellar nurseries where newborn stars blazed with primal fury. Nebulae that played havoc with their sensors and navigation systems. It was a perfect hiding place for something you didn't want found. "Contact," Zarath announced as they dropped out of hyperspace. "Multiple ships. Configuration unknown." Before them hung a massive construct that defied easy description. It was part space station, part shipyard, and part fortress. Sleek Silence vessels moved in complex patterns around its bulk, while what appeared to be factory complexes produced endless streams of weapons and equipment. "Now that's what I call a smoking gun," Marcus muttered, bringing the ship's passive sensors to full power. "Can you get detailed scans without them detecting us?" Zarath's hands danced over her instruments with practiced expertise. "Affirmative. But Marcus, the scale of this operation, they have been preparing for decades, perhaps centuries." The sensor data painted a picture of industrial might that rivaled anything the major galactic powers possessed. Automated production lines churning out weapons by the millions. Massive databases coordinating the activities of client species across half the galaxy, and at the center of it all, a command complex that housed what could only be the leadership of the Silence. "There," Zarath pointed to a section of the station where energy readings spiked periodically. "That appears to be their primary communication array. If we could access it, we'd have a complete picture of their operation, but getting close enough would be suicide." As if summoned by his words, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the ship. On the tactical display, 6 Silence interceptors had appeared from seemingly nowhere, moving to surround the Redemption. "So much for staying hidden," Marcus said grimly, his hands flying over the flight controls. Hold on to something. What followed was a chase that pushed both ship and crew to their absolute limits. The silence vessels were faster and more maneuverable than anything Marcus had encountered, but the Redemption's cobbled-together nature proved to be an advantage. Its unpredictable performance patterns made it nearly impossible for their pursuers to predict its movements. Zareth worked frantically at the sensor station, using every trick she knew to confuse their enemies' targeting systems. Marcus, I am reading massive energy buildup from the station. I believe they are preparing to fire some kind of super weapon. Time to get creative, Marcus announced, diving the ship toward a nearby asteroid field. If we can't outrun them, we'll have to outsmart them. The asteroids provided temporary cover, but Marcus knew it wouldn't last long. The silent ships were systematically searching each hiding spot, and it was only a matter of time before they were found. That's when inspiration struck. Zareth, can you overload our sensor array to create a massive electromagnetic pulse? Possible, but it would leave us blind and defenseless. Not if we time it right. On my mark, I want you to trigger the pulse and then immediately activate our hyperspace engines. It was an insane plan that violated every safety protocol either of them knew. Jumping to hyperspace while surrounded by asteroids and electromagnetic interference was a guaranteed way to end up scattered across several star systems. But as the silent ships closed in for the kill, insane was their only option. Now! The sensor array exploded in a brilliant flash that temporarily blinded everything in the immediate area. In that moment of confusion, Marcus activated the hyperspace engines and prayed to whatever gods watched over reckless humans. The universe twisted around them as they punched through into the higher dimension, leaving their pursuers behind in normal space. For several terrifying seconds, the navigation systems screamed warnings as they hurtled through hyperspace without proper plotting. Then, miraculously, they emerged in an empty system several light years away. Never do that again, Zareth gasped, her normally composed demeanor completely shattered. Deal, Marcus agreed, his hands shaking as he checked their systems for damage. But we got what we came for. The sensor data they had gathered painted a complete picture of the Silence conspiracy. Production schedules, client species communications, strategic deployment plans, everything the Galactic Council would need to coordinate a response. How long until we reach Council space? Zareth asked. At maximum speed? 4 days. But we'll need to stop for repairs first. That little stunt fried half our systems. As they limped toward the nearest neutral port, both of them knew that their journey together was nearing its end. Soon, Zareth would return to her people, and Marcus would continue his wandering among the stars. But the bond forged in crisis and shared danger would remain. Marcus, Zareth said quietly as they watched the stars streak past. When this is over, when the Council has acted on our evidence, what will you do? Keep exploring, I suppose. That's what humans do. We push boundaries, seek out new challenges. He paused, then added, What about you? I will request assignment to human space, if such a thing exists. My people need to learn more about your species. You have shown me that strength is not always measured in weapons or technology. I'd like that. The galaxy's a big place, but it's nice to know there are friends out there. 3 days later, they stood together in the council chambers as representatives from dozens of species examined the evidence they had risked everything to gather. The response was swift and decisive. A joint military force was assembled to deal with the silence threat, while diplomatic missions reached out to the species that had been manipulated into aggression. The war that the silence had planned never materialized. Faced with a united galaxy that knew their true intentions, they retreated to whatever distant realm had spawned them. It would be many years before they dared to show themselves again. In the aftermath, as commendations and rewards were distributed, Zareth found Marcus preparing to depart for parts unknown, His ship had been repaired and upgraded by grateful council engineers, but he still insisted on maintaining its distinctive appearance. "The redemption suits you," she commented, running a hand along the ship's hull. "She brought us both salvation." "That she did," Marcus agreed, "and she'll carry us to new adventures, I'm sure." "Us?" Marcus smiled. "Well, I could use a good reconnaissance officer, and you did mention wanting to learn more about humans. Interested in a long-term assignment?" Zarath's answering smile was radiant. "I thought you would never ask." As they lifted off from the council station, bound for the frontier worlds where humanity was just beginning to make its mark, both of them knew that their greatest adventures still lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but they would face whatever came together. Behind them, the crisis sparked by ancient malice had been averted. Ahead of them, infinite possibilities beckoned among the stars. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that Marcus had demonstrated in a crystal desert. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with one person refusing to walk away from someone in need. The universe was a dangerous place, but it was also full of hope. And humanity, with their stubborn compassion and impossible solutions, was going to make it a little brighter.